Plants, zombies, a match made in heaven. You've most likely played or at least have heard of Plants vs Zombies. It was released on the PC in 2009 by Popcap and was a major success, surpassing all of their previous games. And it's not really hard to understand why the game blew up. The graphics were cute yet simplistic, it came out during a massive zombie craze, and the core mechanics and rules of the game were super easy to understand for anybody trying to get into it. There's also a sense of accomplishment in its progression every time you complete a level, whether that be from unlocking a new plant or encountering a new type of zombie. The game was also just full of things to do, from puzzles, mini games, the survival mode, you get the idea. The game was fun and simple, and it became even more accessible when it launched on mobile devices. Then suddenly, from the depths of a sewer, crawled EA. In 2011, EA acquired Popcap for $650 million. So with new leadership and direction, how do you follow up one of the biggest games of all time? Well, you make a sequel, obviously. I want to make it clear that there isn't anything inherently wrong with making a sequel to a game, especially mobile games. It's pretty common practice that if the first game does well, you follow it up with a sequel. Hell, there's been like 200 different Angry Birds games. But it all comes down to execution, and Plants vs Zombies 2 wasn't it. One of the most controversial things about the game when it first came out was the change in its art style, but personally, I thought the change was good. If you compare the plants from each version side by side, Plants vs Zombies 2 clearly has a more polished look and a lot more expressive and exaggerated animations than the first game, and that's really all the praise I've got. Some of the maps look cool, but they royally messed up here. Firstly, microtransactions. Whether this be from EA or just a product of mobile gaming isn't necessarily clear, but the excessive amounts of microtransactions is astonishing. Personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with microtransactions when it comes to free-to-play games. They need to make money somehow. But when you constantly spam me with pop-ups and lock extremely powerful characters behind a paywall, making the game downright pay to win, then I have a problem. Also, the level design is all over the place. In the first game, every couple of levels you would encounter a new zombie type or unlock a new plant. In this game, those things still happen, but are extremely uneven and not spread out accordingly. It's super random when you would face a new enemy or unlock a new plant. For example, you could unlock everything too quickly, making the rest of the levels a slog to get through, just being really boring without any sense of progression. Oh, and holy shit, some of the levels are unfairly hard. In the first wave, you could have a bazillion zombies swarming you and would almost be downright impossible, which is why they added these power-ups to compensate for it. When you get overwhelmed, you could just throw zombies off screen or electrocute them. But then the game runs into the problem of being a little too easy at points. There's no sense of urgency knowing I could just flick the zombie about to breach me away. Overall, Plants vs Zombies 2 was an unbalanced, cash grabby and uninspired mess, but it still did financially well, so EA decided to turn this cute little mobile game into a competitive third-person shooter, the only natural way to proceed. The first Garden Warfare came out in 2014 with a sequel dropping in 2016, and guys, these games went hard. Despite it being a pretty drastic shift in the format, these games managed to be fun and serious, yet lighthearted and goofy, more in line with the first game's tone. The first game has 4 different plant and zombie classes, including multiple different variations for all of them. Then there's 2 main game modes, multiplayer and garden ops. Multiplayer is a 12v12 shooter consisting of Team Vanquish, which is first to 50 kills wins, and gardens and graveyards, where the plants have to defend their garden from the enemy zombies. Multiplayer is really fun, and while there are only 2 game modes, it definitely makes up for it with all the variations and playstyles from both the zombies and plants. Garden ops is where you have to defend your garden base for 10 waves from the onslaught of different types of zombies. This first Garden Warfare is good, but it has a pretty big lack of content, with only 2 main modes. But the sequel expands and improves on almost everything about the original. They added a bunch more game modes, a single player mode, 3 more zombie and plant classes, and a lot more maps to keep everything fresh. Honestly, one of the best sequels I think I've ever played because it actually does its job and it does it well. And now this is where I think the downfall began, with Plants vs Zombies Heroes. If you haven't heard of Heroes, I wouldn't blame you because I didn't either until like a week ago, but it's basically a Hearthstone ripoff with the Plants vs Zombies branding. And if you've ever played Hearthstone, the game is very much pay to win. You can literally just buy the best cards and start obliterating, but overall it's a fine game. If anything, pretty boring and repetitive, and just a cash grab. Though it is worth mentioning, online play is actually pretty fair and balanced in comparison to Hearthstone. It felt like Popcap and EA just thought they could slap the Plants vs Zombies branding on anything and it would do well financially, but this proved them wrong. The next Plants vs Zombies game was Battle for Neighborville, which is literally just Garden Warfare, but bad. For some reason, they changed the already perfectly fine character designs to whatever the fuck this is, but they also removed a bunch of features, including the character variants. Variants added so much to the original games. If you liked a particular class, for example the pea shooter, you could switch between variants so that things never got boring and repetitive. The only thing they seemed to improve and add on to was the single player, and that's it. The rest of the game is just a massive downgrade and it's super disappointing. It feels like EA wanted this to be their live service game just to cash in on the trend. They had pretty much no marketing leading up to the release of the game, so it's my theory that they wanted to do what Apex Legends did, a surprise launch and hope they do well, but I think the biggest difference is that Apex was free and Battle for Neighborville cost money, and was also just a bad game in general. The final game in the Plants vs Zombies series is Plants vs Zombies 3. The first thing you'll notice is that the game is no longer vertical, which is definitely a decision, and it's a complete graphical overhaul. It's a disgusting 3D monstrosity. I don't really understand why they did this. The first game's designs were good, and the second game's designs felt like a natural evolution to the originals. And then you have this. If I had to take a guess, their thought process was just that they wanted to upgrade the 2D art, and they thought the way to do that was just to make it 3D. And it makes it look all unnatural and gross, ew. To give Popcap and EA credit, they did eventually revamp the game to make it vertical again, and some of the 2D art is back, but also they still look so ugly, so that's fun. But regardless, in terms of gameplay, the sun you would collect is now gained in ones, and you'd think to accommodate for such a slow moving sun rate, they would slow down the zombies or add what Plants vs Zombies 2 did with the power-ups. Nope, the zombies are faster than they've ever been and it's painful. They also completely removed the option to pick what plants you use. Yeah, they just auto-pick the plants for you at the start of levels. It's kind of ridiculous. So, what happened? Most people blame EA because of their acquisition of Popcap, and I can agree that the buyout most definitely changed things within Popcap, and EA has made some awful business decisions in the past. But I think it's a little disingenuous to pin the blame completely on EA. I think EA definitely influenced Popcap into focusing more on the financial side of their games instead of actually making high quality games, because of pressure and unrealistic revenue targets. Then they started to crack, and eventually a lot of the team couldn't handle it. EA I don't think was malicious in its acquisition, more greedy and negligent of employees. But regardless of where you stand on what really happened to Plants vs Zombies and Popcap, it's undeniable that the series has taken a hit in terms of quality and has had a steady decline, which is honestly unfortunate because I have a lot of nostalgia for the Plants vs Zombies series. I still crack it open from time to time, and I still play Garden Warfare here and there, and it's really saddening to know that we probably won't get another game on that level of quality again. But who knows, maybe Plants vs Zombies 3 will get an update and it'll be the best game of the decade. I've been Antradox, subscribe, join the Patreon, and click here to watch me talk about Rick and Morty Season 7.